My name's Ian Reid. I'm Principal Clinical Psychologist at Fort England Hospital. The role of the psychologist on the maximum security unit is twofold. One is we're dealing with observations. Okay, so all the observations from the Eastern Cape are sent to Fort England Hospital. Now, an observation patient is someone who has committed a crime, or there's high likelihood that they committed that crime. And at some point in the proceedings, there is a question about their mental health that is brought up. A question about whether they were actually criminally responsible for what they did, or if they were affected by mental illness in such a way that sort of overcame their rational behavior at the time. So these people are referred by the courts for a period of 30 days to Fort England. So it could be because they've got a history of mental illness. It could also be the nature of the crime that it might be a bit bizarre or appear completely motiveless. The clinical psychologist then acts as a case manager for these patients. So basically they are primarily responsible for the assessment of these patients and to make a decision regarding whether they have a mental illness, whether that mental illness played a role in the commission of the crime, and whether ultimately they were criminally responsible or not. Okay, and then a report to that effect would be written, and then the patient would, if it's a serious crime, also be seen by a panel of psychiatrists, and finally a report would be submitted to the courts. The other thing we look at is fitness to stand trial. So if someone is mentally ill, obviously they're not or may not be capable of defending themselves in court. And in that case, we would comment that they either can defend themselves or they're not able to participate in their own defense. So if they're either not fit to stand trial or not criminally responsible, then the recommendation goes to the courts that they be made state patients. Okay, so that is basically, and it is the court's final decision, but it's basically that they are admitted to a state psychiatric hospital for treatment and rehabilitation for an indefinite period. So it could be quite a short period, or it could be much longer if they don't respond to treatment, or that they struggle to move through the rehabilitation program by breaking the kind of levels of behavioral responsibility that are required. So it could be ongoing substance abuse or fighting with other patients or things like that. Things that may be a reflection that they're not going to cope outside. But the ultimate goal is to actually rehabilitate these patients and get them back into the communities. So they go through a behavior modification program, and then they're set out on leave, initially shorter periods and then longer and longer periods until we know we can trust them, and then it's recommended to the courts that they are discharged. So the psychologist also has a role in this, okay? On the maximum security unit with the high risk patients, psychologists usually keep a caseload of patients and would see them once a week for a consultation. On the other state patient wards, and there's a lot of state patients, about 200 at any one time at the hospital, psychologists were involved in group activities and individual psychotherapy in order to facilitate the treatment and rehabilitation of the state patients. So a lot of the emphasis of our work is on the forensic side of the hospital, and the majority of psychologists that work there are involved in some way in forensics. If you're interested in forensic psychology, it hasn't yet been declared a formal subspecialty. We are working on that. So there's no formal training as such. The training mainly consists of attending privately run courses, working under supervision, or else attending an internship like at Fort England, where there's quite a lot of emphasis on forensic training. So at Fort England, we would rotate interns through the maximum security unit, where they learn about most of the aspects of forensic psychology within the criminal justice system, at least. Hopefully one day it will be declared a separate speciality.